welcome virtually to Grand Rapids Community College. We are really happy to have 3 members of the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission here. And if you have never heard of them, then they're going to tell you all about it. So the hosts today are Heather Richards, who's a professor in the Social Sciences Department here at GRCC. And then myself, Meghan VanderMale, I'm a professor in the math department. So we're going to be streaming live on YouTube and streaming live on Facebook, as well as meeting here in Zoom. The first half of the Zoom meeting will be a presentation from our 3 commissioners. One of the commissioners, Cynthia Orton, wasn't able to come today, so we've got 3 here, and I'll let them introduce themselves in a moment. So they'll give a brief presentation, and then we'll have a question and answer time. So if questions come up while they're presenting, you can feel free to put those in YouTube, put those in the Facebook Live chat or in the Zoom chat, and we'll keep an eye on those to ask when they're done. And then the second half is going to be a hands-on mini workshop on using Districtor to draw maps. So the commissioners will leave after their presentation is done. And then we'll kind of get into Districtor and see how you can draw communities of interest and how you can draw your own districts. And we'll also look at the public comment portal so you can see how to submit those for the commissioners to consider while they're drawing their maps. So I'm going to stop my share and go ahead and let the commissioners introduce themselves and start their presentation.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
Yeah, thank you everybody for having me here tonight. My name is Rebecca Zatella. I am one of the commissioners and I am also the vice chair of the commission, and I live in Wayne County, Michigan.
My name is Dustin Witches. I am also one of the commissioners on the MICRC. I currently reside in Ypsilanti or Howell, Michigan, depending on what day of the week it is. And I am also the one pursuing a master's degree in math. So yay, everyone who's doing that, who's attending.
Hey, my name is Steve Lett, and I would like to thank everyone for having us here. We always appreciate groups allowing us to come in and speak on what we're at least going to attempt to do. I live up in Interlochen, Michigan, and I'm assuming since you're all Michiganians or Michiganders, whichever you prefer, that that's up by Traverse City. So I'm the northern guy. And since we don't have a lot of people from the west side of the state on the commission, I'm the western guy too. Glad to be here and see everybody.
Yeah, so if you want, we can go ahead and start our presentation. And Dustin, were you going to share or do you want me to share? I can't hear you.
Sorry, I'm on my personal computer. This is why my face also looks angled up. So I only have snippets of it up.
All right, that's all right. I'll share it. I got it ready to go. So
Perfect.
All right. Can everybody see my screen? Okay. All right. So we're here to talk about the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. And again, thank you very much for having us. We appreciate being here. So let's talk about the history of the MICRC. So in 2018, Proposal 2 was placed on the ballot, and Michigan voters overwhelmingly passed it by over 61% of the vote. The ballot initiative provides that voters and not politicians will take responsibility for nonpartisan redistricting, and the proposal created the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. The purpose of the commission is fair and independent maps through meaningful public participation. The commission itself is actually composed of 13 randomly selected Michigan residents. It includes 4 who affiliate as Democrats, 4 who affiliate as Republicans, and 5 who affiliate as independents. The MICRC is responsible for redistricting Michigan's congressional, House, and Senate districts. Dustin, I'm going to hand it off to you.
All righty. Let's see. So as far as public hearings go, before we can draft or draw any line or redistricting plan, the commission has to hold at least 10 public hearings throughout the entire state. We're actually doing more than that. We're hosting 16 currently, all throughout the state to obtain public input and comment from people who live in the areas that we're visiting. Or virtually, if you want to attend that way, it doesn't matter where you live in the state. You can always log in and give public comment, but we're holding 16 in-person public comment hearings for that particular purpose, so we can get an idea of how people want their areas to be handled and or drawn. Let's see, next slide. So the purpose of the public hearings are threefold. One, to inform the public about the redistricting process, to share the purpose and responsibilities of the commission itself, and to solicit information from the public about potential redistricting plans. Another reason why these are important is if people don't give public comment, I like to say that at that point we just end up guessing, and then we really don't know how people in the area want to have their districts drawn. I can go to the next one. All right, and this would be my last slide here. This is the very the next set of public hearings that we're doing. It's this week. They both are going to be in Detroit. The first one at the Village Dome at Fellowship Chapel on June 15th. And then we're in Detroit for the first time at the TCF Center on Thursday. We're also going back there once we have drawn our maps to get public input and comment on the maps that we are having proposed. And with that, I'll send it over to Steve.
Nope, it's coming back to me.
Oh, I'm just kidding.
That's okay. So after we are in Detroit, we're going to then move on to Port Huron. We're going to be at the Blue Water Convention Center on June 22nd. And then after that, we're moving to Warren. Warren is also one of our first and second sites where we're going to have one meeting coming up in the next couple of weeks. And then once we draw the maps, we'll have a second meeting in that location as well. In terms of, whoops, I'm sorry, I went a little too far. In terms of what our redistricting criteria are, the Michigan Constitution spells out a list of 7 criteria that we have to consider in drawing our maps. And it's actually a ranked order, so these are in preferential rank. So first is equal population in compliance with the Voting Rights Act. The second is that the districts have to be geographically contiguous. And what we mean by that is they have to be connected into a single district. You can't pull off Traverse City and have it combined with Lansing with a bunch of districts in between. Number 3 is communities of interest, which Steve is going to talk about a little bit more what that means. 4 and 5 relate to political parties. We can't give a disproportionate advantage to any political party, and we can't favor or disfavor either a current elected official or someone who's running for office, a candidate. We have to give consideration to county, city, and township boundaries. And lastly, we have to keep the districts reasonably compact. So now I'm going to pass it off to Commissioner Lett to talk about communities of interest.
Thank you, Rebecca. Communities of interest may include, but they are not limited to, populations that share cultural or historical characteristics or economic interest. Communities of interest do not include relationships with political parties, incumbents, or political candidates. While we have been in these public hearings, there are a certain number of themes which have developed, rural versus urban, school districts, county lines, township lines, etc. Next. Ways to engage, obviously, show up or sign up for email and text alerts at michigan.gov/MICRC. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at redistrictingmi. You can submit public comment at michigan.gov/MICRC. And I think Megan has indicated that you're going to look at that later this evening. It's really not hard to do. Even I can do it. So if I can do it, it is not hard to do. You can request to present at one of our meetings, again, through michigan.gov/MICRC. At public hearing, we usually have anywhere from 1 to 5 virtual presenters, and perhaps even a phone call. And for those of us who have nothing, you can mail us a letter at P.O. Box 30318, Lansing, Michigan 48909. Mail it to MICRC. So those are all the ways that you can get information to us. We have also started out having meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 1 o'clock. Those are open to the public at our public hearing venues, and they are also on the Facebook and YouTube, etc., just like everything else. So that is kind of our presentation. We would be happy to answer any questions that anybody may have.
Can I do it in person? Or do I have
Sure.
to- how do you determine, I don't know if quantitatively is the right term, but the different COI characteristics?
We do not determine them quantitatively other than what the people say. And typically, as I said, there are themes that have developed in public hearings. Farming, we had one farmer come in, very eloquently spoke about farming. We've had a number of people speak about the urban versus rural split. The rural people don't necessarily want to be lumped in with the urban people and vice versa. Rebecca, what are some of the other themes that I'm not remembering?
So industry specific. So when we were up in Marquette, we had people talking about mining in the mines. There was also discussion about when we were down in Kalamazoo, Battle Creek area, the Waterloo Recreation area, and then in general in the Battle Creek area about whether they're more closely affiliated with Kalamazoo versus being moved up to Grand Rapids, which they currently are districted into Grand Rapids. So we've had that. And then you mentioned school districts too, right? School districts has been a big one that comes up quite a bit. But I think that's pretty much it. Those are kind of the things we've heard about, the rural, urban, and differing opinions on that as well. Some people who are rural want to stay rural. Some people who are urban want to stay urban with their urban compatriots. And then some people say, mix this together. So we're definitely getting a variety of opinions.
What's the issue with school districts? Do they want to sort of like stay in the same conference?
Yeah, so people who are saying that their school district is a community of interest, and so they would like the lines drawn to reflect the school district so that people who are in school districts are in the same voting district.
Yeah, that's one thing as well in regards to school districts. Another thing is townships themselves. I mean, a lot of people are saying that, don't split our county up if you don't have to. But there are certain townships that I've noticed that they say, okay, well, township 1 and 2 may be in one particular county and township 3 may be in another one, but they are more closely aligned together than the rest of the counties that they reside in. So they consider groups of individual townships as a community of interest as well, whether they share a common workplace or watershed.
I would also say that there are kind of 3 more that just popped into my head. One is the Asian American community. We received some feedback about particular cities that have high Asian American members of the community, and then also Arabic American. And then lastly, in terms of the school districts, we received a lot of discussion in Dearborn in particular about combining Melvindale, River Rouge, and Dearborn school districts together in a single voting district because they have similar populations of students who have the need for special resources in terms of they are often arriving in this country as non-English language speakers and need a lot of more resources in terms of their ability to be educated properly.
So your job is really to sort of sift through what you hear the public telling you to make a recommendation?
Well, yes. The idea, I hope, is to see what the people have said as it pertains to particular areas. However, we don't make recommendations. We are going to draw the lines and set the districts. That's what we do. We are the final word.
Yeah, I would just say that, ultimately there might be a point where we have to balance competing communities of interest that we're hearing about, and how we're going to do that. We haven't decided yet as a commission. That's a bridge we have to cross yet. Right now, we're just listening and we're trying to gather information about the communities of interest. And then at some point, we may have to, we may not have to. It may all align perfectly, so we don't have to worry about prioritizing. But those are all concerns and issues that we're going to have to deal with down the line as a commission as a whole, that they're not something that we've made decisions on at this point. We're just listening right now.
Thanks a lot.
And that would, another thing is that we all know that, we're not going to be able to make everybody happy based off of what, they're suggesting. Again, we're just listening at this point. We take everything as I'm taking everything weighed roughly the same, but I know deep down that we're not going to be able to make everybody happy in regards to what everybody wants. Otherwise, we'd have 9 million districts in the state. So
I think everybody would be happy if we could make each county its own district, but there's 83 of those, and we're only going to have 13 congressional districts. So it's probably not going to work out this time around.
I do have a question that came in from Facebook, but while I'm doing that, I'm just wondering, I think you had a slide that had the rank order list of criteria that you're using.
Yes.
I'm wondering if we could pull that up. So just so we can see where communities of interest falls in.
It's number 3.
Okay.
Equal Population and Voting Rights Act are number 1 because those are that's the law. Geographically contiguous, as Rebecca said, we can't have Traverse City and then Detroit in one district with 10 more in between. So one district has to be one district.
Okay, so the question from Facebook is, to what extent do you intend to refer to the current districts as we design districts?
Well, the people that we've heard from mostly are saying to, and one person put it this way, throw the baby out with the bathwater and start afresh, start new. And I believe that I believe that that's what we're going to do. Now, it may end up looking like we have done some of that. Obviously, the Upper Peninsula and the Northern and Lower Peninsula, you're not going to do a lot with that because of the population. But you get down around Detroit, there's a lot of room to make a lot of improvements, we think. But no, we're not going to sit there and look at the line and move one up a couple of notches and one over a couple of notches. We're not going to do that.
I'm wondering if you could share how this process for redistricting differs from what it was before.
Well, I guess the answer to that is more transparency. And we're actually listening to what the people want when it comes to how they want their districts drawn, as opposed to having the districts drawn in Lansing by the people who hold a job as an elected official to draw them the way that they see fit, and then take gerrymandering out of it, not having the districts and maps drawn in smoky rooms, as Commissioner Jatella likes to say from time to time, but in an open and fair process where everything that we're going to be doing is going to be in the public domain, as opposed to in secrecy until they're published.
Yeah, and I think the addition of these ranked criteria are totally new as well. The previous maps were drawn every 10 years by the political party that was in power. So if the Democrats were in power, the Democrats drew the maps. If the Republicans were in power, the Republicans drew the maps. And there really wasn't any across the aisle, kumbaya participation of both parties together to draw these maps. They were doing it for their own advantage. And 4 and 5 of our criteria expressly preclude a party from doing that. So, we're starting from an entirely new process. We have new criteria. Communities of interest is entirely new. The fact that people can provide input as an individual is entirely new. I think 10 years ago, if you had gone to whatever caucus was in control of drawing the maps and said, hi, I live in Dearborn and I think you should draw the line here, they probably would have either just totally ignored you or laughed at you, but they certainly wouldn't have taken your feedback seriously. So it's just an entirely new process. The redistricting criteria are entirely new. The feedback process is entirely new. And the fact that it's not politicians drawing the map, it's a group of 13 randomly selected citizens who are doing it. So the entire process is new.
How has that been? I'm wondering, as a group of 13 folks who have no prior experience with any of this, how has that process of educating yourself on everything and learning how to work together as a group and learning how to use Robert's Rules of Order and all of that, how has that been for you?
I'll take that.
Go ahead, Steve.
It's been fine. The commission is very collegial. We all work together very well. I in my estimation, I was the first chair, and I thought that we came together very nicely. We feel that we are operating within the confines of the amendment, the Constitution. We do use Robert's Rules of Order, contrary to what some of the citizens say from time to time. If you've been watching, you've probably seen that. As far as learning how to do this, we have practiced on Districtor with Ohio, so we could beat them up. We have not drawn any maps in Michigan because we're not allowed to at this present time. We will not be using Districtor. We have hired professional map drawers, and we will be using their programs that they have in their jobs, their corporation. EDS is the name of the company, and we're learning. We're starting. We had a meeting presentation last week from Kim, who is the president of EDS, and we'll have more this week and next week. So we're just starting that learning process on how to interpret the information that's out there that's available. We've had some of that before, so we are continuing to have that type of ongoing education, and pretty soon we'll get to where we can work on drawing the maps and figuring out what the commission's feelings are as to how those are going to come down. If you've been looking at the portal, some people have started putting maps in, and quite frankly, some of them look pretty good, but that doesn't mean they are, because you have the Voting Rights Act. Equal population is pretty easy to spot. On the Districtor, the populations are right there, but as far as Voting Rights Act, they're not there. And if you've followed any of this, I don't know. Looking at those maps, I can't tell if they violate cracking or packing, and so those are all the things that at some point in time we're going to have to consider.
Another question came in from Facebook, which you kind of have addressed, but maybe you want to add more. It says, do you have a technology consultant to assign in assist in designing the districts? I'm wondering if maybe you want to tack onto that anything about consultants regarding the Voting Rights Act as well.
Sure. Justin, you want to speak to that?
Well, so we have Election Data Services, or EDS, as our software provider that we're going to be using to draw the maps. That was already touched on. And then we have a VRA attorney. I can't remember if that was with EDS or if it was someone that we hired at this particular point in time in my life. But they're going to be assisting us with Election Data Services to make sure that we are indeed complying with the Voting Rights Act in the maps that we are going to be drawing and with what EDS is going to be helping us with.
Rebecca, you want to touch on the VRA attorney and the other gal with EDS?
Yeah, so we actually have two different experts who are going to be assisting us with the compliance with the Voting Rights Act. One is Mr. Adelson, and he specializes in Voting Rights Act compliance. And then we also have a woman who is working, and I'm drawing a blank on her name, I'm sorry, who's working with EDS, our other consultant who's doing the line drawing, who is also going to be providing similar assistance along the same lines of compliance with the Voting Rights Act. So we have a good body of experts who are going to be assisting us in drawing these maps.
We are not using darts.
Do you have any questions from YouTube? If not, I've got one more from Facebook here. You're on mute, Heather. I'll move. Heather, oh, you're on mute. We couldn't hear you.
My apologies. My sprinkler system just went on. So I don't know if the comments are turned on. I see that there are 4 people watching on YouTube, and I did invite people to post questions, but I don't have anything yet. So.
Okay, that's fine. Then I'll move on to this other one from Facebook. Okay. It says, when will you receive final census data necessary to draw the maps?
We have what they call the legacy numbers from the Census Department, Census Bureau. And those are, in fact, the numbers that will be used with a more finely defined numbers as you get closer, what they call there's a statute, 94-117, I think numbers is what they call them. Well, those go down to, state, counties, township, blocks. So that's where you have that type of information. But to have just the, how many people are in Michigan, we've got that. And we'll use that. And if we, as you may know, we've asked the Michigan Supreme Court to grant us an extension past our deadline so that we can get those numbers and use them. That hearing, we're going to have a hearing on that June 21st. Our general counsel will be there arguing that in front of the Michigan Supreme Court. What they decide is whatever they decide. But we have the raw numbers now. They're called legacy numbers. We can drill down. We're being told we can drill down and make a lot of headway using those, which we will start to do once we finish up with the public hearings. That answer your question?
We'll wait and see if we get a response on.
Yeah, I believe it did. A lot of the data from the 2020 census has been uploaded up to the census website. I've been using it in class. So yeah, that's already out there, but it's been maybe a month and a half. So it should be helpful at this point to just have something to dig into. Yeah.
One more thing that I'm thinking folks might appreciate hearing more about is the application and selection process for the 13 commissioners. So you mentioned what the breakdown is, but I'm wondering if maybe you could go a little bit into how the application and selection went.
I'll ask Rebecca to take that since she was in the hot seat. She knows all about how that works.
Yeah, so I'm actually, I'm the third replacement commissioner for my seat. So the way that it worked is that people could apply. There were some people who were randomly selected and received applications from the Secretary of State. At the end of the day, they ended up with almost 10,000 people who were expressed an interest in wanting to be on the commission. And from that, and again, all of this information is available online on the State of Michigan website. They actually have all of the selection process and actual videos of them running the selection. So they, based on that, they conducted a first sort of selection of a group of people. And I believe it was 200 people that they selected. It wasn't 100% random per se, because they obviously want to make sure that there was representation. So, otherwise we would end up with everybody in Wayne County instead. So there was some algorithm that related to particular areas so that we would have somewhat of a spread. There was also an algorithm related to gender. If you notice, our commission is pretty evenly split male to female. And then also other algorithms that went into trying to make sure that we had representation of people who were from different ethnicities as well. So once they ran through that process, they pulled the 200 names, and then both political parties in the state got to strike a group of people from that initial selection. So those, again, that information is online and available as well. You can look at who was struck by each party. And then based on that final list, out of the 200, they drew 13. 13 commissioners were originally sworn in. One of the independents resigned. He was replaced by, he or she, I'm not sure if the first one was female or not, was replaced by a second person who also resigned. And then I was drawn as the third person to take that seat, and I've stuck. So yeah, but all of this information is available online. You can actually go to the Michigan Department of State and look up what the process was, what the selection criteria was, who applied. They actually have all the statistics on gender, backgrounds, and so on and so forth available out there if you want more information on it.
I'd be interested to hear what kind of criteria was necessary to be met to strike out candidates from each side.
That I was going to say, I can answer that one. That was the strict. I mean, the ones that were struck by the 20 that were struck by the Senate majority and minority leader and the House minority and majority leader.
Yes.
Unfortunately, there's no way to really know that.
Mm-hmm.
That was, I don't know if they picked 4 or each one picked 5 at random, or 5 out of the 200 at random, or they actually looked at their responses to it. But that actually was not part of the, I guess, the law to give a reason as to why they wanted to strike those particular individuals. They just had the opportunity to strike up to 5 each, and they picked 5 each for every single, all 4 of them picked 5 each to strike 20 names.
Yep. And, they didn't need to provide a rationale as to that. So it's just the list of names that they provided. So that's all the information that was available.
I'm sorry, I'm going to take that one step further. As the political scientist of wanting to dig deeper, how do you feel about that, not having to give a reason? It kind of reminds me of voir dire, preemptory challenges. There are some things that you don't have to give a reasoning for, but is this something that in the future we might want to think about improving on this process? Are there areas that you've already run into, understanding that this is a relatively new way of redistricting, where we could do improvement to the policy, to the proposal?
Well, we haven't,
go ahead, Steve.
We haven't heard anything about the striking, which you're correct. It's a peremptory challenge, and you don't have to have a reason. And I think that that's fair. The Democrats can look at the names and say, hey, that we don't want that person. They're just a wild flaming whatever. And the Republicans can do the same thing. So you don't have to have a reason. You can get rid of 5. each of you. So that was 20. That brought it down to 180. What we have heard is, how come there's nobody from the UP? How come there's nobody from Grand Rapids? And my rather flippant answer was, well, you got to get more people to apply so you have a better chance. But my real answer was no. I don't feel that it's a bad system. Would we like to have somebody from the UP? Yes, we would. Would we like to have someone from Grand Rapids or Kent County? Yes, we would. We would like that. But then you're making a finer pick, and then it's not so random anymore.
Mhm.
So I guess, to make it random, you take the bad with the good.
Yeah, and I would say that having spoken with the NAACP and presented at more than one of their meetings, there is a concern, and there was a concern that perhaps some of those preemptory challenges, so to speak, were targeting people who were of color. And, I just encourage them to go and look at the list and do the research on that themselves, because I don't know that anyone's necessarily looked into it. And I don't know who was challenged and who wasn't. I don't know that the statistics on that have been compiled. Having a background as a lawyer, I'm very familiar with jury selection and preemptory challenges. And, kind of the theory on that is you can strike for any reason as long as it's not the wrong reason. If there's, a pattern that the judge is starting to see in how you're striking, if you're only striking women of color, that could potentially be stopped by the judge. There isn't really a fail-safe in this process to permit that sort of scrutiny into why people are struck. So maybe that's something to consider in the future. I don't know that it's hurt the commission one way or another this round, but it certainly is something that I think could be considered to be changed in the future if there is evidence that maybe it's being abused or misused in some way.
So as an attorney, then you'd obviously see that we're not going to be able to evaluate whether or not there's a pattern until it's done, every 10 years.
Yep.
And then these individuals, because the state of Michigan has term limits, will be rotated out. So, that's kind of a uphill battle with attorneys. You have that opportunity to look at their pattern of preemptory challenges over a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
That just, I don't know. I wrote it down.
But I think this time around, you got a pretty good spread.
Yeah.
I would say that
I'm not saying that the commission isn't representative or that you're not all doing a great job. I'm just more interested in, since we are intentionally trying to be so much more random, were some of these people from Kent County or from the UP who could have rounded out the commission a little bit more. So those are the types of things that I'd be interested in looking.
Yeah, and I believe the names are available, and I believe everybody who was drawn as a candidate, you can actually look at their application. So I think theoretically you can look into that information.
Great, perfect.
Well, what I was going to say was that, and I certainly wasn't going to say that I was taking your comments that we weren't being representative. That wasn't what I was meaning. What I think is that this commission has a pretty good spread, other than we don't have anybody in the UP, and we probably could use somebody from the west side. But
and someone who's Hispanic. We don't have anybody who's Hispanic either, I don't think. So
if you come to 2030 and you get 13 people out of Southwest Michigan, then you probably got a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be, could there be some tweaks? I think there could be some tweaks. I don't know necessarily what they would be, but voters, not politicians, may be looking at that.
Yeah. I also think too, when you're talking about striking 5, possibly 10 people out of a group of 200, that's still leaving a really big pool to pick from. So I'm not sure how profound that effect would even be, even if it was being misused, because it's just such a big pool.
Got 2 more questions questions here from Facebook. Angie, I'm gonna save yours to the end because I think it's a good one to end on. But Heather, if you've seen any more from YouTube, let me know. But otherwise, I think we can let these 2 questions be the last 2, if that's all right. So one of them is, what kind of extension are you seeking from the Supreme Court? Candidates need to know as soon as possible what district they live in.
Rebecca?
So the original deadline was November 1. We're asking to have it pushed to mid-January because that will give us time to have the complete census data and draw the maps. And we actually picked that time frame and that request in coordination with the Department of State to make sure that there would be adequate time on the back end in terms of candidates completing their applications for office and circulating petitions if they need to do that. So we did plan our request around those deadlines to make sure that we weren't going to run into issues in terms of the actual election itself. And then ultimately it's up to the Supreme Court as to whether they're going to grant that extension or not.
The other thing that keep in mind that we have to do once we draw the maps are going to be drawn a long time before mid-January, January 17th, I think. We have to have 5 more public meetings to show what we potentially think are going to be the maps so that we can have public input. So that whole ball of wax takes time.
Yeah, Megan, I'm sorry. Angie Sanchez is actually a PhD student at Michigan State.
Go green.
And she, I invited her. She does a lot of work around bringing awareness and advocating for people in tribal communities, and specifically Northern Michigan, and really around the state. So I invited her to this because I really felt that her being a tribal member and advocating for the tribe, she would be best informed as to the needs of tribal communities, both on the reservation and off. So her question was, if the commission is already created, what is it that she can do to contribute? And I think that comes around the communities of interest, but I would like you all to have an opportunity to address her specifically and what her talent and knowledge brings. She also has an MBA and a minor in math as well. So
that question again was, what can we do? The commission's already formed. So what can others do? Well,
one thing that we've had very little input from tribal members, from Indian representatives. I believe in, did we have any at Dearborn?
In Midland, we did.
Midland.
Yep.
But we haven't had, I'm actually surprised. I'm surprised we have not had more people from the tribes or representing the Indian, whatever. We just haven't had them. I mean, I bet we haven't had 5.
Yeah.
So to answer the question, she could get more people out to talk to us, or submit on our web, on the portal, what they want to see.
Yeah.
We're aware they're out there, but they certainly haven't made their presence known in these public hearings.
Yeah. And maps would be helpful too. I mean, maps drawing the tribal community. I mean, we can look on a map obviously and see where the reservation is, but I'm sure not everybody lives on in reservation areas. And so if there's any maps that could be submitted to us, particularly Isabella, I think kind of stands out and everybody knows about that. But I know that there's also tribal areas in the Upper Peninsula as well, which I personally have no awareness of where those areas are. And so it would be very helpful if someone would draw some communities of interest for us, indicating where those regions are, where there's concentrations of tribal communities. That would be very helpful.
And one other thing that I've been telling people is in regards to giving us any kind of public comment, whether it be maps or communities of interest or even written testimony or whatever you want to put on the portal. I can only speak to myself, but there's some people that have spoken to in that regards, well, you're not going to look at these particular comments. Now, I can't speak to anybody else on this particular commission itself, but I at least check that website every other day, if not every day, to at least skim through to see if there's anything new there that's been posted to look at. And I do spend a good couple hours every day or every other day at a minimum going through what's there. And I'm going to assume that most other individuals on the commission are doing the same thing. So everything that you post there is getting looked at. So don't be afraid to submit and be engaged and help us throughout the process by utilizing our portal that we have had created.
So from the tribal community, you would like to see more input and feedback on mapping, not and just posted again. Can you read it, Megan? 68% of the tribal community does not live on reservations. And her comment is, we are dying. That's why public service, as it pertains to participating in political and policy communities, is at the bottom of our list of things to do. We are just trying to make it to tomorrow, which, makes somebody emotional knowing that they're trying everything, but their voice has been marginalized for so long, which is specifically why I invited her along, because Michigan State does have an amazing program advocating for Indigenous. So my hope is that this maybe catches a little bit of fire over at Michigan State, and she can pick a couple of allies. But I think her statistics here that 68% of tribal communities live off the reservation. It's something to be concerned about. So,
well, I don't think that any of us assume, I know I didn't assume that, all the Indians lived on a reservation. What I would like to know is, where are the concentrations other than the reservations? I mean, I'll assume that a reservation has a pretty good concentration of the population, but where else are they living? That's what we're looking for, is a community of interest. They're a community of interest, obviously. Right. Are they just simply spread throughout the entire state like the wind, or are they around, pick one, Mount Pleasant, Isabella County, Chippewa County, Big Rapids, that way, or are they up towards the thumb? I don't know, and they're not telling us.
Yeah, and it's the same thing we've seen, like I mentioned earlier, with the Asian community, and then also with the Arab American community, where we've had people say, okay, Rochester Hills, there's a high population of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. And, if you give us that information, we can work with it. If we just don't have it, it's very difficult for us to address those concerns, because we're just 13 people who have been plucked from throughout the state who may not have that specific knowledge and information. So we really do rely on people sharing it with us. So to the extent that information can be provided to the commission, it would be incredibly helpful. And we will look at it, especially, if you're submitting the comments to us. We read all the public comments. I read all the public comments too, and I'm constantly flagging things that are of interest. And so all we need is one person to submit that comment to us. It doesn't need to be 100, just one person saying, okay, here is the areas where there are a large Native American population. And that would be helpful, and we can use that in drawing our maps. But if we don't have the information, then it's really just going to be a crapshoot as to where those lines get drawn.
Well, I do think that between Ange and I and her connections that we can certainly get a sizable amount of help to the commission on mapping those. And Ange just said this was the first that she had heard about it, and the only reason why she had heard about it is because of me.
Can I jump in here real quick? And
Sure.
I'm wondering if we can move to the ways to engage slide, just so that we can see other ways. And the second half, I mean, what we're going to do next is look at Districtor and actually work through mapping a community of interest. So for those who are here, especially on behalf of a community or an organization, we'll show you how to do that. It's very easy to use. So we'll show you how to do that so you can submit a map. There's another question here from Facebook. I know that we're supposed to stop at 7:15, so I'll do these briefly. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but one question says, does the census data provide information regarding communities of interest, for example, Native Americans?
They do to a certain extent. There were, I think there's 6 ethnicities on the census. You can help me if you know. I know there aren't any for Arab Americans. I know there aren't any for North Africans. So that's the extent that I'm aware of what the breakdown on those types of populations are. There may be other information that we can access outside of the census as far as seeing who lives where. I know Michigan State, as well as the state of Michigan, both have information that they've presented to us that we will be able to access. And now how finely tuned that gets, I don't know, but that's what I know right now.
All right. And I think there's some more questions about, well, there's one about whether you want geocoded census data or maps.
We're looking right now for maps. I understand what they're talking about, geocoded, and you know, we haven't got there yet. So they can put it on there if they want. There's no reason they can't. I understand what they're trying to do, but right now we're just kind of looking at the maps. I don't think, and this is my own personal opinion, that probably the majority of people who are submitting maps probably know about geocoding. I may be wrong though, maybe they do.
And can you remind us one more time when you'll be in the Grand Rapids area, when and where?
So let me pop back
Next
here.
week. Next week, we're going to Muskegon.
Yep, there you go.
and
June
Grand
29th.
Rapids.
Yep, June 29th and July 1st.
So this is if folks want to come in person
Yes.
and speak to you.
We've added 2 more. We're going to Traverse City, August 26th, and we're going down to Southwest Michigan, St. Joe, Benton Harbor area, somewhere down there. I don't have it on my calendar yet. I don't have my calendar right in front of me. But we've added 2 more, so those are 2 more. And then we're going to several schools, colleges, to say. So we're trying to get to all of you people. You got to help us out here. I mean, you can't sit back there and say, well, you guys didn't consider me. Oh, did you come and tell us? No. Well, okay.
Yeah, I did reach out to Western, Aquinas, Ferris State, Grand Valley. I reached out to many of my colleagues and people that I know, as did Professor VanderMale, to try and get more specifically math and political scientists who study redistricting to participate today. I don't know if they're on one of these platforms, but We will shoot this out to them after it's done. And I think we had hoped to do a Spanish translation in the transcripts on YouTube as well, and provide that to viewers on GRCC's YouTube webpage. So
I will say this, we haven't gotten a lot of college students come in to talk. We have had several, I'll say probably less than 5, but the ones that show up are very well informed, very well spoken, and make very good points. We have had likewise a few high school students come in, and they typically do pretty well. So if there are any more questions, we'll stay as long as you want.
No, I was just going to say thank you so much for coming and answering all of our questions. We really appreciate it. It's an honor to have you visit. We know you're really busy right now. Probably will just get busier. So thank you very much for joining us.
Well,
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Best of luck in the coming months.
Tell all your friends.
oh,
We will.
Thank you.
Even tell the people you don't like.
yeah, when I put mine out on Facebook, I made it public. I said, I don't know if you voted for or against the proposal, but we need your voice either way. So,
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you
night.
so much.
Good night, guys.
And
All right, so for everyone else, we're gonna do some mapping. Let me share my screen real quick. Oop, hang on. We're gonna, here we go. Maybe we're gonna share. Here we go. So we're gonna take a look at the public comment portal and see how to do some of this mapping. So some of the questions that came about how to map and what kind of data is available. We're going to look at Districtor, which is not what the commissioners are using, although they're using it as a way of getting public input. But the technology that they're using is significantly more sophisticated. There's much more detailed data. To the point where they have professional consultants who will be helping them navigate the data. But what we will look at is Districtor. So this is a software that you can use to map things. So a way to access it, there's 2 ways. So you can go right to the public comment tool. So that's www.michigan/mapping.org. Or you can just go to the MICRC website, which is www.michigan.gov/MICRC. And then if you do that, this is how I always get there because I forget how to get to the other address. But you go in.
hey, Megan, can you pop those links into the chat?
I will. Yep.
They're not selectable. So,
Yep. You're right. Let me do that real quick. Hang on.
and I would, but
I'm just gonna put the
yeah, because I can't select it on
oh,
either.
there we go. Javier just put it in for
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so let me pull my screen up again. So if you go to this, and the other reason why I like going here is that there's a lot of information about the commission here. So you can see their meeting schedule, their meeting notices and materials archives. If you want to go look and see which people submitted applications that were eliminated from the running, all that data is in here. If you want to see the original applications of all 13 commissioners, you can see that. So there's really everything is here on this website, and they have their schedule as well for their public hearings. But the public comment portal is here. And there's a lot of very helpful information. Some of it we talked about already, but this is what the submission form looks like. Now, you can also mail a letter or call, there's a lot of other ways, but if you want to do this online, you can do written testimony. So you can just share your comments. So you just type it in here and submit that way. You can do a file upload. So if you want to hand draw a map, if you want to print out something and hand draw a map, you can just take a picture of it, save it as a PDF and upload the file. So if you want to go kind of like low tech, that's one way of doing it. You could also go to the public hearing and bring a map and hand it to them. You could mail a map to them. They'll take it that way as well. The other link is if you have another type of mapping software that you want to use. So Dave's Redistricting app, Representable are two of the common ones besides Districtor. You can create a URL for that and submit that. So if you're using some other application. The districting plan and community, that's what we're going to look at today. So these you can do in Districtor and you can submit those. There's room for you to describe what it is that you mapped. And really with all of these, you can add a tag. So if you're talking about the Grand Rapids area, you can tag Grand Rapids. You could tag Kent County. Whatever tags you want to use, you can use more than one tag. So if you want to tag the name of the community that you're talking about, you can do that. So those are kind of the different options for submitting through their public comment portal. And when folks go to share during the public hearings, they encourage them to also submit it through the portal. So they have it kind of all together. And when you do that, it'll ask for your first name and an email. The email is just to track to make sure that there's not, you know, some hacker that's emailing, you know, 1,000 districting plans.
Yeah.
So that's just to keep track of IP addresses. And you can provide other information, but you don't have to. And then down here, there's some information about how to draw maps. We're going to go through that here as well. All right, so if you want to draw these maps, let's say you want to submit a districting plan or a community of interest. So let's start with that first. To draw a community of interest, you can see there's options down here. So there's 3 different types of maps that the commissioners will be drawing. So they'll be doing the congressional districts. So there's 13 of those. Michigan lost a seat in the new census. There's Senate districts and there's state house districts. So they will be drawing 3 sets of maps. You can draw examples of those districts in Districtor. You can also do a community of interest. So if you click on this, and you can go ahead and try this on your own. I'm going to have you try it in a minute. But let me just kind of demonstrate how you would use this. So I'm going to zoom into the Grand Rapids area. But you can, you know, use whatever area you want. The community of interest field. So I'm just going to name this GRCC main campus. So I'm just going to map kind of the area around GRCC. This is going to be very informal and not super accurate, but just to demonstrate. So I'm going to say this is area surrounding GRCC main campus. And then what you can do is put an important place. So down here, if you want to identify an important location, so if your community has kind of a central location like a school or a park or a certain building that is very central to your community, you can map that. So if you click on new, and then you just put it on the map. So I'm going to do that location. I'm going to name it the GRCC main campus. And then you can describe it if you want. And then I'm going to draw the area that I want to include. So I'm going to click on this paint button here. And it's got these blocks. I believe these are precincts. I think this is by precinct. If not, it's by census blocks.
No, it's by precinct.
It's by precinct. So it doesn't let you break that up. So you have to have a whole precinct or whole census block, but you'd select the area around it that you think maybe is related to this. So if I want to encompass areas that have, a significant amount of GRCC students, I'd probably have to go pretty far because we get a lot of students from all over. But just for the sake of an example, you kind of maybe fill those, right? So for example, if you wanted to map areas where there's a higher concentration of the indigenous community, then you could use this community of interest tool to do that. So you can have a map that you can present. There's some different features. You can change the brush size if you want. So if you want to go really big, you can, or you can go smaller. You can undo if you make a mistake, and you can erase. Like that. You can add another point of interest. So I could maybe add the DeVos campus is kind of over here. So I could add another point of interest. You can do another community of interest. So if you want to add the second community, if you go to the paint button and hit plus.
Okay, Megan, do you want to understand, do you want to explain about the intersection of mapping a community on top of a community?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing right here. So you could have, if you want to say this is maybe a less prominent area for students to come from, you could do that. Or, maybe you could do students that go to our Lakeshore campus. So you have a second area. And you can see that there's overlap, which happens with communities sometimes, right? So you can have overlap between two communities. So what I'm going to do is give you all a few minutes to try doing your own. So we've got the first task is go ahead and go into that community of interest drawer. And if you have questions about that, you can throw it in the chat and we can try and answer those. So take a couple minutes, try and identify a community that you would like to map. Give it a name and a description, and then plot one or more important places. So give it a name and or a description for each of your important places. If you want, you can draw a second community of interest on the same map. And then once you're done, you can click save and proceed to submit map, and that will bring you back to the public comment portal. It won't submit it until you actually go through and submit. So don't worry, it's not going to submit anything, but you can just see how it will bring you back to the portal. So we'll give everyone maybe like 4 minutes to try that. And if you have any questions, we'll watch.
Megan?
For it. Yes.
I know I'm the class idiot. I totally lost how to find it.
Yep. I can go back. Let me switch my screen.
I don't know how I did the maps the first time.
Okay, let me get out of my presentation. I'll show it again. You're probably not the only one that wants to know about this.
Oh no, don't let them.
Okay, here we go. So, so if you go to the main MICRC page.
I am. Oh, community.
Scroll down to submit public comment. And then down here, there's an option for mapping a community of interest, and that will bring you to Districtor.
Wait. How to draw a map? No.
Go down a little farther. It's right under that. And then
the purple one.
Yep, map a community of interest.
Opens in Districtor. Thank you.
There you go. That's it.
You can also just copy and paste when you get to that final page into the chat, Megan. So it takes them right to it.
Okay, I can do that too. well, I'll leave this up for now so people can see, but I'll do that for the next one.
Megan, did you say at one point that these should be under a certain percentage of the population? I thought you said
That's for the district maps.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because the community of interest will not be limited in population.
there's also as you're drawing your map, under data layers, where you can show county boundaries and tribal governments, and the previous boundaries for individual districts and school districts.
Take maybe one more minute and then I'll show you how to do some evaluation of your map if you'd like to.
I gotta put it in there.
Okay. If you're not done, that's okay. But if you want to take a look back at my screen, I'm going to show you how to do some evaluation. So there's some additional information in here. This is not, like I said, it's not going to be quite as cutting edge as what the commissioners are going to be using. The data is coming from the 2010 census. But if you go to this data layers tab here, you can turn on things like the state Senate boundaries, which is, if you zoom out, you can kind of see that. The US congressional boundary, state house boundaries, so those are the smallest. School districts, so your community of interest depends on a school district, that might be helpful to have those boundaries turned on. And then municipalities. So that's something that you can use when you're drawing them, if some of these boundaries might be helpful for you to see. The other thing that you can do is if you go to evaluation, there is some population information in here. And you can do it by just general population or voting age population. So I have, I've got 2 communities in here. So I have 2 columns. If you've just done one, you'll just have one, but it will give you the racial breakdown of your district. And this is just information that's coming from the census. So there's not going to be anything that's not from the census data on there. So that's something that could be interesting to see regarding your community of interest. And then I'll just show you real quick before we move on to the districts. If you hit save, it's going to give you this URL here. So you can copy it if you want and save it somewhere. So if you want, you can just go back to it. So if you hang on to that URL, if you aren't done, you want to continue editing, you can do that. If you want to submit, then you can hit proceed to submit map, and you can see that it brings you right back to the public comment portal, and it has your map in it. And then you can write comments if you want to give additional description or why this community of interest is important. You can add your tags and then go ahead and submit it. So that's how you can attach your map to your public comment. If there's any questions about any of this, feel free to put it in either chat or the Facebook or YouTube chats, and we can answer that. I wanted to move on to districting. So to draw entire districts, it's very similar in terms of how you get there. So you'll still go to the public comment portal, and you go down here and you'll select the districting plan. Actually, I think you don't need to submit it. You can just go or select that. You can just go down here, and it depends which one you want to draw. So I think I'm going to have, let's see, we're going to do state Senate districts. So you want to go ahead and select state Senate districts. And then take a look at my screen. I'm just going to give you a quick demo of a couple things. So the state Senate districts, let's see, there are 1, 2, 3, 4. So it looks like 38 state Senate districts. So there's a color for each one. And how big should they be? Well, if you look down here at this population information, you scroll down, it's going to tell you about how many people should be in there. So this number, I believe, is, oh, did they update it for, I thought that, yeah, this is 2010. Yeah, so this is old census data. So this was the population from the 2010 census. They haven't updated it to the 2020. So like I said, this is not going to be quite as current and updated, but it'll give you an idea. So you want about that many people in each district. So to go ahead and draw that, you want to be on your brush button. If you need to move the map around, you want your hand. And then you can start drawing. Now this is kind of big. I might want to zoom in and have a smaller brush, but notice that it's telling me the population over here in the bottom right corner. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit and move this. Right now, I'm not really going to pay too much attention about where it is. I'm just going to try and get an equal population. So let's see. I want to hit that line of about 260,000. So let me see how close to that I can get. Oh, that's too much. So let me erase a little bit. Okay, so that's pretty close. That's a little bit under. So you can see the population deviation, how much I'm deviating. We want to keep that pretty close to 0 if possible. So that's not too bad. And then if you go back to the paint button, you can select another color And you can start painting. Now, if you do this, you could paint over what you already have. So if you want to lock in place a district you've already drawn, you can select this, lock already drawn districts. And then it won't go over anything you already have. And then you can do your second one. And again, I'm just going to try and see if I can get an equal population for now. I'm not really going to pay too much attention about where I'm drawing.
This is what they're gonna do.
Yeah, so this is rural, right? So I'm gonna have to go much bigger because the population is smaller. If I include Kentwood in here, oh, it jumps right up. So let me take some of this out. There we go. So that's pretty close. And you can see the population deviation is still at 0.2. So what I would like you to do is, again, just take 5 minutes, and your second task is to draw 3 Michigan Senate districts of equal population and see if you can get less than a 0.8% deviation in the population. Once you've done that, you can go to the data layers and evaluation tab. I'll show you how to do that in a minute, but take a couple minutes just to try drawing the maps first.
Is there any way to minimize that, the population balance? Or am I just
found a way to
doing
do
it?
it. I know it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard with the stuff on the top.
It's like,
Good evening, everyone. Hello,
Yeah.
Dearborn. If we can have everyone get to their seat, we're going to get started.
I think we got, oh, there we go.
Good evening. As chair of the commission,
Mark, I think you might have to mute yourself.
Michigan Commission
I think you're,
order at 5:04 p.m.
sorry for multitasking.
Megan, you can mute that for a second if need be.
so there's a question in the chat that says, when you submit a map like this for the state Senate, do you need to submit the 38 districts or could you just draw a couple of them? You don't have to draw all 38 districts. In fact, it's a lot of work to draw all 38 districts. If you want to, it might be fun to try doing it, but probably, you're going to be an expert in specific areas. So it might make more sense to submit a map for an area in which you kind of have some expertise. But, you know, if, like the commissioner said, they got a lot of comments from folks surrounding, in the Kalamazoo surrounding areas that are in a district with Grand Rapids. And they said, you know, I'd prefer to be in a district with Kalamazoo. So maybe they would want to draw a few districts in the Kalamazoo Grand Rapids area just to show what areas they might like to be in a Senate district with.
What was the margin?
0.8%.
Crushed it.
Let me go back to,
0.18.
oops. Let me go back to Districtor and we'll see how we can kind of evaluate and what information is in here. So again, if you didn't finish drawing through districts, that's okay. Some different features in here that can be helpful are, again, data layers. So if you want to see what the current state Senate maps are, you can turn that on. School districts, again, if school districts are important, you know, maybe you might want to make sure that whatever Senate district is involved with Central Grand Rapids, maybe you don't want that to have a bunch of different school districts in it. So you might want to use that. Oh, tribal governments as well. Let me turn off school districts.
Yeah.
So there you go. You can see some of the tribal districts are labeled, county boundaries, and then demographics. So one thing that's interesting about these maps is these are built using voting precincts rather than census blocks. So voting precincts have the past presidential election data in them because they're based on voting rather than the census. So you can see some interesting things there. Now, if you go to the evaluation tab, you'll be able to see even more. So again, you can look at population by race. So this has the two districts that I've drawn, and it shows the percentage white, black, Hispanic population. You can select others as well. If you want to turn on Asian population, you can do that. So it allows you to select 3 different options. And then you can narrow it by voting age specifically. And then the partisan balance, that's where you can see a little bit more in terms of the partisan breakdown if you'd like to. If you want to turn that on in your map, it can be a little difficult to see if you already have the maps drawn, but if you go back to data layers and click on show election results, it will shade in the different areas. You can't see it, but there's more blue here. So there's the urban center of Grand Rapids is more Democratic, and then you can see the surrounding areas. Some of the rural areas are more heavily Republican. You can display it as shaded regions or as sized circles as well. So that information is in there.
Megan, Steve Lett mentioned something about economic as being one of the criterion.
For communities of interest, that could be, yeah, economic interest or industrial interest, yeah.
How do they do that? From what the public tells them?
Yes. Yep. That's based on
Yep.
What information is shared.
Yes, absolutely. We want to consider areas that are marginalized or areas with a higher concentration of poverty, so that those groups of individuals aren't split up. Pardon me?
Aren't ignored.
Yeah, but that information isn't really in here, right? So that would have to be something that someone would go in and draw a map of and say, you know, this is what's going on in my area, and submit that. One last thing, because we're almost time to end, but contiguity, that's just going to show you if you accidentally you know, draw two portions that are not connected somehow, that's going to tell you. It'll give you like a little warning and say you have a contiguity is another name for connected. So if you have a district that's two separate chunks that aren't connected, that will tell you if there's an issue there. So again, just like before, you can go to save, copy if you want to keep working on it and save that URL somewhere. But then once you're ready, you can hit proceed to submit map and it'll bring you right back. It'll have your map in there. You can talk about your plan, why you did it, tag it, and then submit it if you would like.
In the training, they were pretty clear though, when you save a map, to save that URL, because when you go back in and you make changes, you get a new URL.
Yes.
So every time you make changes to the map, you have to save the new link. You can't go back to the old one. Does that make sense?
Right. So you want to copy that, put it in some document where you'll be able to find it again, and then or bookmark it or something so that you can go back to it.
I would recommend starting an Excel spreadsheet and put the link in and the date that you worked on it, so that every time you go back in, you'll have the most recent one available to you.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming. We went 3 minutes over, but
You're so union.
we're very happy to have all the participation. We've been watching, I know there's been a lot of viewers on Facebook and YouTube, and this is recorded. So if you have anyone that you know of, if you know of folks that might have particular communities of interest that they might want to map, you could share it with them. And then also just a reminder that July 1st at the DeVos Center, the commission will be coming for a public hearing. So if you want to go in person and talk to them, you can do so. And then also, if you have any other questions that come up, feel free to mention something on the Facebook page. You can contact me as well, or Heather, if you have any questions, if you want help with mapping, I'm happy to do that. I'm sure Heather will as well. Both of us have been trained by district or staff in helping people map communities of interest. So we're happy to do that.
Just to note that the commissioners, just a reminder, I wrote it down, they added a second date for Grand Rapids. So it is June 29th and July 1st. So I was kind of excited about the second one.
Like a concert tour, another Springsteen concert.
Yeah. Only not quite as fun as Springsteen. And then they added one for August 26th in Traverse City. So.
Road trip.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming. We hope you have a great rest of the evening, and enjoy mapping if you continue doing some mapping.
Megan, the reason that started playing was I went back to the homepage, and I don't know how I missed it. It's like right there at the top. And it was like another picture of me on the wall of shame. And
yeah, if anyone wants to view public hearing videos,